The manila folder sat on Mario Cox's desk, its contents threatening to unravel 8 years of marriage. But that would come later. 3 days earlier, everything had seemed normal, or at least that's what Mario had believed. Danny had been proud of his drawing. At 6 years old, he'd used every crayon in the box, creating a family portrait that now felt like a punch to Mario's gut. The stick figures were crude but unmistakable: a tall man labeled Daddy, a woman with yellow hair labeled Mommy, a small boy labeled Me, and another tall figure, this one with dark scribbles for hair and a wide smile, labeled simply Todd. "Who's this?" Mario had asked, keeping his voice light as he pointed to the fourth figure. He'd been standing in their kitchen in suburban Connecticut, still wearing his chef's whites from the restaurant he owned downtown. The scent of garlic and rosemary clung to him, remnants of the dinner service he'd just finished. "That's the man who comes when you leave," Danny said matter-of-factly, already moving on to arrange his toy cars on the living room floor. The words hung in the air like smoke. Mario felt his heart rate spike, but his face remained neutral, a skill honed during years of high-pressure kitchen environments where a single mistake could ruin an entire service. He'd learned to think clearly under stress, to observe before reacting. "Danny, come back here for a second, buddy." Mario crouched down to his son's level. "When does this man come over?" "When you go to work at night. He brings pizzas sometimes. The kind with the stuffed crust I like." Mario's mind raced through a catalog of possibilities, none of them good. Marissa had been his college sweetheart, the art history major who'd laughed at his terrible jokes and supported his dream of opening a restaurant when everyone else called it foolish. They'd married young, had Danny 2 years later, and built what he'd thought was a solid life. He found her in their bedroom, folding laundry with the detached efficiency of someone whose mind was elsewhere. The afternoon light caught her blonde hair, and for a moment, she looked exactly like the girl he'd fallen for at 22. "Hey, look at this." He held up the drawing, watching her face carefully. Marissa glanced at it, and something flickered in her eyes, too quick to identify, but definitely there. Then she laughed, the sound too bright, too forced. "Oh, please, that's just a child's imagination. You know how kids are. He probably saw someone on TV, or where does he sleep?" Mario interrupted. "What?" "I asked Danny where the man sleeps." He paused, letting the silence build. He pointed to our bedroom, said, "In Daddy's spot." The color drained from Marissa's face, then rushed back in a flood of red. "That's ridiculous. Danny's 6, Mario. He doesn't understand." "What doesn't he understand?" Mario's voice remained calm, but there was steel underneath. "I want you to look me in the eyes and tell me there's no one else." She met his gaze for exactly 3 seconds before looking away. In that moment, Mario knew. 8 years, reduced to 3 seconds of eye contact. "His name's Todd, isn't it? Todd Marsh." Her shock was genuine this time. "How did you?" Danny labeled the drawing. Mario set the paper on their dresser, each movement deliberate and controlled. "I'm going to ask you one question, and I need the truth." "How long?" Marissa sank onto the bed, her composure crumbling. 6 months. "Mario, it just happened. I never meant." 6 months. He repeated the words like he was tasting something bitter. 6 months of lying to my face. 6 months of bringing another man into our home, into our bed, around our son. "It's not like that." "Then what's it like, Marissa? Explain it to me." She couldn't. The words tumbled out in a mess of justifications and excuses. He worked too much. She was lonely. Todd understood her in ways Mario didn't. Each sentence was a cliché pulled from a cheating spouse's handbook, and Mario felt his anger crystallize into something colder, sharper. "I want you to leave," he said finally. "Mario, please, we can work through this." "No." The word cut through her pleading. "You made your choice 6 months ago. Every time you lied, every time you let him sleep in our bed, every time you exposed our son to this, you chose. Now I'm choosing. Get out of my house." What Marissa didn't know, what no one knew yet, was that Mario Cox had grown up in foster care, bouncing between 12 different homes before aging out of the system at 18. He'd learned early that trust was a luxury he couldn't afford, that people would betray you without hesitation if it served their interests. He'd spent his entire adult life trying to be different, to build something stable and real. And he'd learned, in those hard years, exactly how to survive when people turned on you. Marissa left that night, tears streaming down her face as she packed a suitcase. Danny was at Mario's mother-in-law's house, a small mercy that his son didn't have to witness the implosion. Mario stood in the doorway, arms crossed, and watched his wife of 8 years walk out without saying a word. Some part of him recognized he should feel something: grief, rage, heartbreak. Instead, there was only cold calculation. The next morning, Mario called Gabriel Reynolds, his sous chef, and the closest thing he had to a brother. They'd met in culinary school, two outsiders who'd clicked immediately. Gabriel had been there when Mario married Marissa, had held Danny in the hospital, had invested his own savings when Mario opened Luminera 3 years ago. "I need a favor," Mario said when Gabriel picked up. "The kind you don't ask questions about." Gabriel arrived 30 minutes later with coffee and a knowing look. "What did she do?" Over the next hour, Mario laid it out. Gabriel's jaw tightened as the story unfolded, his dark eyes flashing with anger on his friend's behalf. "Todd Marsh," Gabriel said slowly, testing the name. "Why does that sound familiar?" Mario had already done the research. Todd Marsh, 34, worked in pharmaceutical sales for a mid-sized company. Divorced once, no kids. His social media painted him as a perpetual bachelor, all gym selfies and club photos. The kind of guy who wore too much cologne and called women sweetheart. "He's been posting photos at Noir on Friday nights," Gabriel said, scrolling through his phone. "That's Jensen's place. I know the bartender there." "Good." Mario's mind was already working through possibilities. "I need you to find out everything about him. Where he goes, who he knows, what he cares about. What are you planning?" "I don't know yet." Mario stared at the family photo on his mantle. Him, Marissa, and Danny at the beach last summer. All smiles and sun-kissed skin. A life frozen in time. But it's going to hurt. Over the next week, Gabriel became Mario's intelligence network. Todd Marsh, it turned out, was a creature of habit. Friday nights at Noir, Wednesday gym sessions at Peak Performance, Sunday brunches at Clover Street Bistro. He drove a leased BMW, lived in a luxury apartment complex he couldn't quite afford, and had a pattern of dating married women. The last detail came from Karen Everett, Marissa's former best friend who distanced herself 6 months ago. Right when the affair started, Mario realized. She'd called him guilt-ridden and angry. "I tried to tell her she was making a mistake," Karen said over the phone. "But she wouldn't listen. She was convinced you didn't appreciate her. That Todd made her feel special." "Did you know he was seeing someone else?" Mario asked. Silence. "Then what?" "Todd Marsh. He's got another girlfriend. Started seeing her 3 weeks ago, according to Gabriel's sources." The sound Karen made was somewhere between a laugh and a sob. "God, Marissa's such an idiot." Mario hung up feeling grimmer than before. This wasn't about winning Marissa back. That ship had sailed the moment she'd chosen betrayal. This was about something deeper. The principle that actions had consequences, that you couldn't destroy someone's life and walk away unscathed. But Mario needed more than just emotional satisfaction. He needed leverage. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Isaac Johns, Mario's attorney and occasional poker buddy, had been running through the divorce paperwork when he'd noticed something odd in the financial records Mario provided. "Your wife's been moving money," Isaac said, spreading bank statements across his desk. Small amounts, always under $10,000 to avoid reporting requirements. "It's been going to an account in the Cayman Islands." Mario leaned forward, his interest sharpening. "How much total?" "Nearly $200,000 over the past 18 months. The number hit Mario like a physical blow. That was money from Luminera's profits, money that should have gone into Danny's college fund or the restaurant's expansion. Money he'd trusted Marissa to manage while he focused on building their future. "Can we trace where it's going?" Isaac's smile was predatory. "Already did. The account belongs to a shell corporation. And guess who's listed as a co-owner? Todd Marsh. Bingo. Which means this wasn't just an affair. They were planning something. Maybe planning to run off together, start fresh with your money." Mario sat back, his mind racing through implications. This changed everything. What he'd thought was a simple affair had been a calculated betrayal. Months in the planning. Marissa and Todd hadn't just hurt him. They'd stolen from him. from his son's future. The cold anger he'd been nursing since finding Danny's drawing crystallized into something absolute. They wanted to play games with his life? Fine, but they'd chosen the wrong opponent. Mario Cox had learned in foster care that the world was full of predators who saw kindness as weakness. He'd spent years building walls, becoming someone who couldn't be hurt. Then Marissa had slipped past his defenses, made him believe in something better. She'd made a mistake. Both of them had. "Isaac, I need you to do something for me," Mario said, "and it needs to stay between us." The attorney raised an eyebrow. "How illegal are we talking?" "Perfectly legal. Just creative." The plan came together over 2 weeks of careful preparation. Mario had always been methodical. In the kitchen, a single misstep could ruin an entire dish, and life had taught him that the same principle applied everywhere else. You didn't rush perfection. You built it layer by layer until the final result was inevitable. Gabriel had discovered that Todd's pharmaceutical company was in the middle of a major audit. One whiff of financial impropriety and Todd would be finished, his career torched before he could explain. The Shell Corporation in the Caymans, while not illegal on its own, would raise uncomfortable questions about where the money had come from. But Mario didn't want Todd fired. That was too clean, too simple. He wanted something that would last, something that would make Todd understand the cost of his choices. The key was Marissa. She'd been calling Mario daily, leaving tearful voicemails about how sorry she was, how it had all been a terrible mistake. He'd ignored every single one until yesterday, when he'd finally answered. "I want to talk," he'd said, his voice carefully neutral. "About Danny. About what comes next." She'd agreed immediately, desperately grateful for even this small opening. They'd arranged to meet at a quiet cafe on Thursday afternoon, neutral territory where they could discuss the divorce terms like civilized adults. What Marissa didn't know was that Mario had already filed for full custody, documenting her affair and the financial theft in excruciating detail. What she didn't know was that Todd's other girlfriend, a paralegal named Grace Pena who worked in Isaac's building, had been very interested to learn about Todd's extracurricular activities. What neither of them knew was that Mario had spent the last week creating a perfect trap, baited with exactly what they both wanted: money and a future together. Thursday afternoon arrived with the kind of crisp autumn weather that made Connecticut beautiful. Mario arrived at the cafe 15 minutes early, ordered black coffee, and waited. Marissa appeared right on time, looking worn and anxious in a way that would have moved him 2 weeks ago. "Thank you for meeting me," she said, sliding into the seat across from him. "Let's keep this brief," Mario replied. "I have a service tonight." Her face fell slightly. "Always, it came back to the restaurant, right?" "Of course." Isaac drew up the papers. "You'll get the house." "Mario, I don't want the house I want." "Let me finish." His tone was pleasant but unyielding. "You'll get the house, but the business stays mine. Sole ownership. And I want full custody of Danny." "What?" "No, absolutely not." "Marissa, you had an affair. You brought another man around our 6-year-old son. You lied for 6 months. Do you really think any judge is going to side with you?" She went pale. "You wouldn't do that to Danny. He needs his mother. Then prove you can be one. Here's what I'm offering. Joint custody, 60-40 in my favor. You get the house, I keep the restaurant. Clean break." "What about the money?" There it was. Mario kept his expression neutral. "What money?" "The savings. Our investment accounts. Those stay with me. Consider it compensation for what you cost me." Marissa's jaw tightened. "That's not fair. I put years into supporting your dream. And I put years into trusting you." Mario leaned forward slightly. "But I'm not completely unreasonable. There's one other option." She looked up, hope flickering in her eyes. "What?" "The Cayman account." All the blood drained from her face. "How did you? You weren't as clever as you thought. That $200,000 you've been siphoning off? I want it back. All of it. With interest." "Mario, that money's not. I can't just." "Can't? Or won't?" He pulled out his phone, showing her the screen. Bank statements, transaction records, the Shell Corporation documents. "Because from where I'm sitting, you have 2 choices. Return the money voluntarily, or I make this part of the divorce proceedings. Which means it becomes public record. which means Todd's employer finds out he's been involved in financial schemes with married women. "You bastard," she whispered. "I prefer thorough." Mario pocketed his phone. "You have 48 hours. After that, I file everything with the court." He stood, leaving her sitting there with tears running down her face. Part of him, the part that had loved her, felt a twinge of guilt. But that part was getting smaller by the day, crowded out by the cold satisfaction of watching his plan unfold exactly as designed. That evening, Gabriel met him at Luminera after the dinner rush. The restaurant was Mario's pride and joy, a 30-seat space with an open kitchen where he could craft the kind of elevated comfort food that had earned them a loyal following. Tonight's special had been pan-roasted duck breast with cherry gastrique, and they'd sold out by 8. "Grace called," Gabriel said, accepting the glass of bourbon Mario poured. She confronted Todd about Marissa. He denied it, of course, but she showed him the photos. And he tried to spin it, said Marissa was just a friend. Grace told him to lose her number and walked out. Gabriel's smile was vicious. But here's the good part. She also mentioned the offshore account to her boss. Mario raised an eyebrow. Casually, very casually, just wondering aloud if someone moving money offshore while dating multiple women might be worth looking into. Her boss happens to handle white-collar crime cases. "Gabriel, you're a beautiful man." "I know." Gabriel took a sip of bourbon. "Marissa's going to return the money, isn't she? She doesn't have a choice. And when she does, she'll have to explain to Todd why their escape fund suddenly disappeared." Mario swirled his own glass, watching the amber liquid catch the light. Relationships built on betrayal don't handle stress well. Let's see how long their great love survives when the money's gone and his career's in jeopardy. The 48 hours passed. On Saturday morning, Isaac called with news. Marissa had initiated a wire transfer, returning every cent to the joint account she'd stolen it from. Mario immediately moved the money into a trust for Danny, untouchable and protected. By Monday, the dominoes were falling. Todd's company had launched an internal investigation into his finances. Nothing criminal would be found. Mario had made sure of that, but the scrutiny was enough. Todd was placed on administrative leave pending review, his reputation within the company shattered. Grace, it turned out, had friends throughout the paralegal community. Word spread quickly about Todd Marsh, the pharmaceutical rep who juggled married women and offshore accounts. His social media went dark. His Friday night appearances at Noir stopped. Marissa called Mario on Tuesday, her voice raw from crying. "He broke up with me." Mario, standing in Luminera's kitchen prepping for the evening service, said nothing. He said I ruined his life, that getting involved with me was the biggest mistake he ever made. She laughed bitterly. "Funny, isn't it? That's exactly what I told you." "What do you want, Marissa?" "I don't know. Absolution? Understanding. A pause. You planned this. All of it. I documented everything. There's a difference. You destroyed him." "No," Mario said quietly. He destroyed himself the moment he decided sleeping with another man's wife was acceptable. "I just made sure there were consequences. Actions have consequences, Marissa. You both forgot that. What about us? Is there any chance?" "No." The word was final. "Sign the papers. Move on. Try to be a good mother to Danny, because that's the only thing that matters now." He hung up before she could respond. The final piece fell into place 3 weeks later. Mario arrived at the restaurant early, as was his habit, and found Todd Marsh waiting in the parking lot. The man looked terrible, unshaven, his expensive suit rumpled, dark circles under his eyes. "We need to talk," Todd said, stepping into Mario's path. Mario regarded him with the same cool appraisal he'd give a fish at the market, checking for freshness. "No, we don't. You ruined my life. You turned Grace against me, got my company investigating me, poisoned Marissa. I did nothing but protect what was mine." Mario's voice was flat, emotionless. "You're the one who decided to sleep with another man's wife. You're the one who helped her steal from our family. You made your choices, Todd. Now you get to live with them." Todd's face flushed red. "You self-righteous." "Careful." Mario didn't raise his voice, didn't move, but something in his tone made Todd freeze. "I've been very patient, very measured. But if you threaten me, if you come near my family again, I will make what's already happened to you look like a favor. What else could you possibly do? Mario smiled, and it wasn't pleasant. You really want to find out? Because I've still got evidence of that offshore account. I've still got proof you knowingly participated in financial schemes with a married woman. Right now, your company's investigation will probably end with you losing your job. But I can make it criminal if I need to. Your choice. Todd stared at him, and in that moment, Mario saw the man clearly. A coward who'd built his identity on surface charm and easy conquests. Someone who'd never faced real consequences before. The kind of person who took what he wanted and expected the world to forgive him. Stay away from my family, Mario said. Consider that your only warning. Todd left without another word, and Mario watched him go with grim satisfaction. It wasn't enough to just win. You had to make sure your victory stuck, that the lesson learned was permanent. Inside Luminera, Gabriel was already prepping the line. He looked up when Mario entered. Trouble? Todd Marsh. He won't be back. Good. Gabriel returned to his mise en place. Danny's coming tonight, right? Yeah. Marissa's dropping him off at 6. The custody arrangement had been finalized last week. 60-40 in Mario's favor, just as he'd proposed. Marissa had signed everything without contest, defeated and desperate to salvage whatever relationship she could with her son. The house had been sold. She couldn't afford it alone, and she'd moved into a small apartment across town. Danny arrived that evening with a backpack full of homework and a smile that made everything worthwhile. At 6 years old, he didn't fully understand what had happened, only that Mommy and Daddy lived in different places now, but still loved him very much. Can I help with dinner? Danny asked, climbing onto the stool Mario kept for him in the kitchen. Absolutely. We're making fresh pasta tonight. They worked together in comfortable silence, Danny's small hands carefully measuring flour while Mario prepped the eggs. Gabriel moved around them with practiced ease, orchestrating the evening service while keeping up a steady stream of jokes that made Danny giggle. This was what mattered, Mario realized. Not revenge, not victory, not even justice. This moment, his son's laughter, the restaurant he'd built from nothing, the chosen family surrounding him. Marissa and Todd had tried to take this from him, had betrayed him in the worst possible way. But they'd failed, and in failing, they'd lost everything that mattered. Todd his career and reputation, Marissa her family, and the life she'd taken for granted. Mario had learned long ago in those foster homes that you couldn't control what people did to you, but you could absolutely control how you responded. You could be broken by betrayal, or you could be forged stronger by it. He'd chosen strength, and in choosing it, he'd won. 2 months later, Luminera received its first James Beard nomination. The ceremony would be in New York in spring, and Gabriel was already planning their strategy if they won. Danny was thriving in first grade, his reading scores improving every week. Marissa had started therapy and was slowly rebuilding her relationship with their son, though Mario maintained careful boundaries. Todd Marsh had left Connecticut entirely, relocated to somewhere in the Midwest to start over. His name occasionally popped up in online searches, usually attached to warnings from women who discovered his patterns. On a cold December evening, Mario stood in his restaurant's kitchen, plating the final course of a tin-top celebration dinner. Through the window into the dining room, he could see happy faces, people celebrating life's moments in the space he'd created. His phone buzzed with a text from Karen Everett, asking if he wanted to grab coffee sometime. He smiled, considering it. The future was uncertain, full of possibilities he hadn't allowed himself to imagine during those dark weeks after Danny's drawing. But one thing was certain, he'd survived betrayal and come out stronger. He'd protected his son, built something lasting, and ensured that those who'd wronged him understood the cost of their choices. In the end, that was enough.